Hello everyone, welcome to Come Sit at My Table. We appreciate you joining us for this video. Well, we are on day 6 of our 12 Days of Christmas videos. And today I'm going to do a recipe that my grandmother did the entire time that I was growing up pretty much. I believe she got this recipe for her Old-Timey Fudge off the back of a metal cocoa box, Hershey's cocoa box. I don't know if you remember them or not, but it used to come in a metal box with a round lid on top that she pried it off with a spoon. So I think she got this recipe off that box. I'm not 100% sure about that, but I think that's where it came from. So we're going to make my Mamaw's Old-Timey Fudge today. Let's talk first about what utensils and pans you're going to need, because it is important to gather everything you need and make sure you have it before you start making the fudge. So first, you're going to need a square 8x8 or 9x9 inch dish that you have lined with foil and then coated with butter. You need to make sure that you have lined it well and that it has some butter in it that you've just spread around. You also are going to need a candy thermometer. Now, candy thermometers are available just about anywhere, and they're not too expensive. So just make sure you have a good candy thermometer that you can use to measure the temperature as you boil your fudge. We are going to bring it up to the softball stage, which is 234, 235. So make sure you have a good candy thermometer. Then you're going to need a saucepan that's at least a 3-quart saucepan or bigger. 3 quarts is really close. A lot of times it will boil up right to the very top of it. So if you've got something that's a little bigger without being too big, you might want it, but make sure it's at least a 3-quart saucepan. Then you're also going to need a whisk or a sieve, because we want to make sure that the chocolate and the cocoa are combined well and there are no lumps. So a whisk works just fine, but if you have a sieve and want to put it, or a sifter and want to put it through that, you can. And then you have to have a wooden spoon to stir with. We aren't going to do a lot of stirring actually we're not going to do any stirring once it starts to boil, but until it gets to the boiling stage, we just want to stir it to make sure that sugar and cocoa have dissolved in the milk. And then at the very end, once it cools down and it's almost ready to set into fudge, we are going to beat it for a minute or two just until it loses its gloss. So you do need a wooden spoon. And yes, it makes a difference. I know people who say, oh, it doesn't make a difference if you use a metal spoon or a plastic spoon or a wooden spoon. In my experience, it makes a difference. You need a wooden spoon. All right, now let's talk about the ingredients for the fudge. First, we're going to have 3 cups of sugar, just regular granulated sugar. Then we're going to have 2/3 of a cup of Hershey cocoa. Next, we're going to use just 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. And finally, a 12-ounce can of evaporated milk. Now, I've got Carnation, and in the video, I may say to add the Carnation milk. It really does not matter what brand you use, but for my whole life, we have called evaporated milk Carnation milk. So if you hear me say Carnation milk, I really mean evaporated milk. It can be any brand. It does not have to be Carnation. Once we have those 4 boiling and to the softball stage, 234, 235 degrees, then, without stirring, without touching it, we will add 4 tablespoons of butter. Now, that's half a stick that we have cut into tablespoons. We will add 1 teaspoon of vanilla. And then we will add our nuts, and that's optional. You do not have to add nuts to this, but you can add 1/2 to 3/4 of a cup of nuts. I'm only putting 1/2 cup in because I think it's plenty. But if you like fudge heavy with nuts, you could go up to 3/4 of a cup. All right, let's get this started. We're going to start by putting our sugar and our cocoa in our saucepan. And it would help if I had the saucepan over here, wouldn't it?
It usually works better that way.
Yeah. Okay, so we're going to put the sugar and the cocoa and our salt. And we don't need much salt, just about 1/8 of a teaspoon of salt. Very little. And we are going to whisk that together.
And you think this is better than using a sifter?
No, I think you could do either. Put it through a sieve or a sifter or whisk it. But I just grabbed a whisk out of the holder right there. Actually, if you want to do the sifter, that's probably better because it'll break those lumps up better. But any of the three will work. You just want to mix that together. Try to get that cocoa and that sugar blended together some. I feel like if you blend the cocoa and the sugar really well, it helps the cocoa dissolve better. A lot of times when you're doing this, you'll have cocoa floating on the top, and even doing this, you still will. But I feel like it helps it just dissolve a little better in that, I almost said carnation milk, evaporated milk. I know I'm going to do that, and if I do and don't catch myself, just know that if I say carnation milk, I mean evaporated milk. But I just feel like breaking the lumps up now with a whisk in the sugar just helps it dissolve a little better in that milk. Okay, so we have our cocoa, our sugar, and our salt whisked together, and that's pretty good. So I'm done with this. I don't need that anymore. Now we're going to add our milk and start to cook. 12-ounce can. That's a 1.5 cups, by the way, but it's a 12-ounce can. And now we're going to turn on our fire, and I will turn it on probably medium high, somewhere in there, just to get it started. We just want to gently stir this around. We sure don't want to spill this on the stove. So I'll try to be gentle. Start to just stir this together. And it'll take a few minutes for that sugar to dissolve and that cocoa to dissolve and blend in. I can already hear somebody ask, or I can see a comment that says, what if I don't have a wooden spoon? Well, wooden spoons are not expensive. You can buy one of those if you want, but if you don't have a wooden spoon, try it with a metal spoon. But and maybe I'm just a real traditionalist. I can't help it. And because my grandmother always used a wooden spoon and swore up and down it made a difference.
She convinced you.
Yeah, and I believe it. I mean, I think sometimes it does matter what utensils you use. So, if my Mamaw said it made a difference, it made a difference.
You do not question Mamaws.
Absolutely not. And I was telling Melissa earlier, I never remember her making this and putting it in like an 8x8 baking dish. She always made it and poured it on a platter. She had, it was kind of a great big plate. And she would butter that plate. And I mean, she buttered it.
She did not intend for it to stick.
No. And she would just pour it on that great big plate. Melissa said, was it not the same thickness all over? And I hadn't really thought about it, but no, I don't guess it was. But, after it firmed up, she would cut it into pieces and slide it off that plate. And I tried to remember her using a candy thermometer. I don't remember her using a candy thermometer, but
she knew what she was looking for.
I guess she knew when it was ready. She knew how to judge it. They just, I don't know. They had different ways back then, and they just cooked by eye. They could just look at things and tell when they were ready.
Their experience carried them a long way.
Oh, what I wouldn't give for her to be here and make this fudge for me today.
Oh my gosh, she would have so much fun on this channel. She would be giggling. I can just hear her laughing right now.
Yeah, she would. Oh, I loved her. And she loved me.
Oh, you might have been a little spoiled by
Now,
your
don't
Mamaw.
start. A little
I didn't
spoiled.
say a lot. I just said a little. I was trying to be nice and just said a little.
No, I was. Oh my gosh, she spoiled me. I was. I admit it. She was the only person in my life growing up that really did spoil me like that. And it's probably a good thing she lived 2 hours away from us when I was little, because she might have ruined me. I really only got to spend long periods of time with her in the summer because we lived so far away. My dad was a pastor and we had moved from West Virginia to Kentucky, and she lived in West Virginia, so I didn't get to stay with her a lot.
But she eventually followed her home.
She did. After my grandfather passed away in 1978, she just was not happy there anymore. And so she sold her house and bought the house next door to my mom and dad, which was nice. Okay. We don't want to stay here until this comes to a boil, but once it starts to boil, I will put the candy thermometer in it and we will watch it closely, but I will not stir once it comes to a boil. I will stop stirring it and just let it boil on its own. So, we'll wait for this to come to a boil and stick in that candy thermometer, and then we'll let you see what it looks like. Our candy has reached the softball stage at 234, 235. So all we're going to do is turn our fire off, move it off the heat, and we're going to drop in our butter. We're not going to stir it.
You haven't stirred it since it started boiling.
I have not touched it since it started boiling. We're just going to drop that butter in, and we're going to pour in our teaspoon of vanilla. Now remember that your cap probably holds 1 teaspoon. So you just use your cap and save dirtying a teaspoon. Now, we're not touching that until the temperature drops to about 115 degrees. And when the temperature drops to 110 to 115, we will remove the thermometer, we will add the nuts, and then we will start to beat it. And we will have to stir it with our wooden spoon for probably 1 to 2 minutes, or until it loses its shine. I think you can see there how shiny that is. It's very glossy looking. So when we start to beat it or stir it with our spoon later, and it loses that gloss, that shine, we'll know it's ready to put in our pan. If you stir it too long, it will kind of turn to fudge in the pan before you can get it in your dish. So you don't want to do that. But you do have to stir it, beat it with your wooden spoon for a few minutes. Once it gets down to 110, 115. By the way, this took about 12 to 13 minutes to reach the softball stage, 234, 235. So, it doesn't take long, just, 12, 13 minutes, Melissa?
Yeah, and the last 5 degrees were the ones that seemed to take the longest.
Yeah, the last 5 degrees always take the longest. So you just have to watch it. Don't stir it. Don't touch it. Just let it boil. And now we've taken it off the fire, and it's just going to sit there until it comes down to temperature. I'm not sure how long that will take, but we will time it. So I've never really timed it before, but we will time it today just so we can tell you how long it takes to come down to temperature. All right, once it's down to 110 to 115, we'll be back and finish it up. Our candy has dropped to about 115 degrees. It's really close. So it's time to finish it off. So I'm just going to remove the thermometer. Scrape as much of this off here as I can, because we want all of that candy in the pan. So I'm going to try to get it all off there if I can. And then we will start beating it. All right, I'm going to lay this over here. And I'm grabbing my spoon. Now we are going to put nuts in this, but remember, you do not have to add nuts to it if you don't want to. And we're only adding half a cup. All right, here we go. And you can see it is already stiff. We have to get that butter and vanilla stirred into it really well. And we just want to beat until it loses a little bit of its glossiness. Make sure we get all of it stirred in there. And I can already see that it's starting to lose that shine. Now, let me tell you that it took about an hour and a half for it to come down to 115 degrees. I did not set it outside, although a lot of people do that. They will set it outside, especially in the winter, to let it come down, but I don't do that because I feel like if it comes down too fast, then it gets a little grainy. I don't want that. So, into the pan we go. If you like your fudge to be thicker, and I don't mean, when I say thicker, I mean deeper. You can use a smaller pan than a 9-inch or 8-inch square pan.
Like a loaf pan?
A lot of people do use a loaf pan. But then it's going to be a little bit thicker, so you just decide. I usually do it in an 8x8 pan. Like I said earlier, my grandmother did it in a dish, in a plate or a platter. I guess she just did that because that's what she was used to. I'm going to scrape some of this out of here if I can, because we want it all, don't we?
It's getting thick, isn't it?
It is getting thick. Sure is. Just a little bit more right there. You know anybody who might want to scrape and lick the pan?
I am an expert at licking a pan. That is my area of specialty.
I can't remember what it was I made the other day, and after it was over, you said, you didn't leave any in the pan for me.
It's actually better to lick the pan than eat a piece, I think.
I don't remember what that was that we were making. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that, let it completely firm up. It will take a while, but when it's ready to cut, we'll come back, take it out of the pan, cut it into pieces, and we'll sample one. We'll be back as soon as it's ready. Our fudge has been sitting on the counter cooling for about an hour, just a little over an hour, and it's ready to cut. So we'll just remove it from the pan. We will peel off the foil, pull it back, and cut it. And I'm not going to kid anybody. I'm ready to have a piece of this. Now I am going to cut it into small pieces because it is very rich. And it does not take a lot. Okay, I think I'm just going to do that part right there. Turn it. Cut those. Now, I will tell you that this is not a soft fudge. This is the kind of fudge that you can actually send through the mail. Might have to cut that in half to make those just a hair bigger. You know, a lot of fudge that is made today is very soft. This is more of a firm fudge, and it does not melt easily. So, you know, you can make it and take it to someone and not worry about it getting too soft and runny or whatever. It's more of a firm fudge. You want the first bite, babe?
No, I licked the bowl, remember?
Yeah, she did. Wow, that is so good. That takes me right back to my grandmother's kitchen in Tays Valley, West Virginia, with that yellow Formica top table.
Lovely.
And those yellow plastic chairs, plastic covered chairs. That's it. That is delicious fudge. Do not be intimidated because the fudge has to cook to the soft ball stage. If you have a thermometer, it's very easy to do. If you don't, pick yourself up a candy thermometer at the store. It's very simple. Wow, that's good fudge. All right. Thank you for watching our video. We do appreciate that you've joined us for this. If you would, please go right below this video and give us a like. Click that share button and share this to your own social media. And if you've not already, click the subscribe button and the little notification bell and the word all. That just lets YouTube notify you when we post a new video. Remember that right below this video, you'll see the title. I think we're going to call it Mamaw's Old-Timey Fudge. If you'll click that title, that box will expand. Melissa always puts the written recipe right there for you, and under that is our contact information. Thank you again. We do appreciate you watching our videos. Remember, today is day 6 of the 12 days of Christmas. Tomorrow, we'll be right back here and add day number 7, so don't forget to come back and watch for that video. Thanks again. We do appreciate you joining us. Most of all, we want you to remember that you are always welcome to come sit at my table. Have a great day and Merry Christmas.